any drivers, Ronnie?
Oh my goodness.
I-20 between Tennessee and Lee, we got that 35 miles an hour.
Well, I had gotten to Bucky's because I was, it was like on the E. And so I got to Bucky's from Tulsa Hills coming up here, and I was at Bucky's, and it was like lightning. And I was trying to say, because the electricity went down here.
I've been in trouble.
Well, I had just started, when I go to one excuse me, something like that, I'll get a tweet every once in a while. Okay. All of our kids, grandkids,
It's in there, it's tucked away, 40 minutes. And I don't touch it unless it's a true I tend to forget about it. That's probably a good thing.
yes, it is good that you bring it up. We have to have it for these ball games. And you know it costs, well, for our one was the best, it was $22 for me and John. Yeah. And it was 16, I think, at me and Melina, and then 18. So anyway, everybody goes to different parts.
The last one I was going to Madison, she was a picture Christian. She was cheering, so I went to every single game of hers that year. Home and away. All. They've been to high school games since then.
Well, our building, so they're playing varsity and so we kind of rotate. Who's closer to where our house is? That's where we're
Next time.
Okay, I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. People will matriculate in momentarily, I believe, from supper. Shouldn't have been too bad of a cleanup tonight, so we had pizza. Ben, would you like to be the keeper of the microphone tonight? Thank you, sir. All right, so tonight we're starting session 3 of thank you, Stanley. Session 3 of how to make the most of our Bible study. So tonight we're going to be talking about exploring the unity of the Bible. So trying to understand the big picture of the Bible and how it is a united story from beginning to end. Remember that we've got folks who are listening at home on the live stream. We've probably got more folks at home listening on the live stream tonight because of the weather situation. And so if you would, when you get ready to ask a question or make a comment, would you hold up your hand and Ben will scoot on over to you and share the microphone with you. And that way the folks who are listening at home on the live stream will be able to understand your question, and you won't have to have me relate it to them, so they can get it straight from you, and I won't have to interpret it. That would be very helpful. When you do get the microphone, speak directly into it. Don't hold it at your waist or anything like that. Don't be shy about letting your voice be heard. So mainly so the folks at home can hear you. And Dr. Jim. Yeah. All right, so tonight we're talking about the unity of the Bible. So the key ideas for us tonight is that the Bible's a collection of separate writings written over the process of, at least the time frame covered in the writing is over 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 years, something like that. Since Moses put pen to paper, or put pen to papyrus, and Paul did the same thing at the end of the Bible, or John would have, the apostle writing Revelation would have been the last. But we've got a collection of writings that can make it feel disjointed if you try to think of each work separately. But what we want to see is that even though there are various authors written over a long period of time, that they are all unified in the story that they tell, and that they all work together to move that story forward in the way that a classic story would be written. Now, I want to remind you, we've mentioned this before, that we are talking about a narrative story, but we're not talking about a fable. We're not talking about myth or a bedtime story. We're talking about the real history of God with his people. But it still is written in narrative form or story form. Parts of it written in narrative, parts of it, but they're all gathered together to communicate a history or a story of God and his people that stretches from Genesis to Revelation. So each part contributes to God's overarching plan of redemption, and it helps us to see how we ourselves fit into the story. So we're invited to be a part of that story. So how does that work? So we're going to talk about that tonight. So as we've said, the Bible tells one overarching story. So where does the Bible begin? In the beginning, right? Right? That's what the Bible says, in the beginning. So it starts at the beginning. But it starts with creation. You know, and it answers the big questions for us. Like not only how we got here, but as Zach talked about this past weekend, why we're here. You know, we're here to be God's image. We're here to be loved by God and to express that love out into the world, to be like him, and to take over creation and rule it in an orderly fashion, okay? You know, to make good use out of what God's created, to do good things that glorify God and bring honor to him. So that's why we're here, right? So we find out where we came from. We find out our purpose. You know, God made them male and female, and he gave them dominion over the beasts of the field and the fish of the sea and the birds of the air. So all of that, right? And God said, be fruitful and multiply, you know, and fill out the earth and subdue it, bring it under your control, okay? So we're here for all of that. And we had the blessing, and when I say we, I mean humanity, had the blessing of being able to do that with God in the picture, right? So he plants the Garden of Eden, and Adam and Eve are living in Eden, and God comes to commune with them in Eden, right? Makes regular trips and walks in Eden in the cool of the breeze of the evening. And we messed it up, right? Humanity messes it up. And so we make the choice to rebel. I mean, we don't like to think about it like that, right? We just went for the wrong kind of fruit. You know, it's the way we kind of try to think of it. But really, what those fruits represent are the fruit of the tree of life, right? So you got one tree that gives life from God, and it's God's wisdom on how to behave and act. And you go to take from that tree, but nope, on the way to that tree, you cross paths with another tree. And on that tree has good-looking fruit, and that good-looking fruit is your desire to run your own life, the tree of knowledge of what is good and evil. And so I get to decide for myself what's right and wrong instead of listening to God who tells me what gives me life, right? And then I've got this pesky old serpent over here that's trying to pull me in the opposite direction, right? And so instead of honoring God and taking from the correct tree, humanity takes from the wrong tree, and we give him the big talk to the hand, right? Because the face ain't, you know. All right? So we rebel and push God away. And that ruins everything. What comes about because of that? It's commonly called the fall, but what's the consequence? Death, right? Ultimately, in the day you touch it, you will surely die, right? But that's not all. What do you have in chapter 3 as a consequence? So God starts with the snake and says, because you've done this, you're going to crawl on your belly the rest of your life. I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed, and you will bruise his heel, he will crush your head. So there's enmity between man and the snake, right? And really between man and all animals. There's distrust, and there's this separation. God tells Adam what? What's going to happen because Adam sinned? There's a consequence. Yeah, they're going to make the ground work against you instead of working with you. And it's by the sweat of your brow that you'll earn your keep and earn your living, right? You're going to have to work and work hard. And whereas before, the garden's cultivated and the garden is receptive to your efforts, now the earth works against you. So there's a curse on the earth. And then for the woman, there's this domestic intranquility, right? And that's a problem for the man too. But he says your desire is going to be for your husband, and instead he will rule over you. Okay, so she's going to be frustrated by the marital relationship, and she's going to have pain in childbirth. And so it's just like everything goes wrong. You have this curse on the world, right? The rest of the Bible, the whole rest of the Bible, is about fixing that, about God reversing the curse and taking away the consequences of sin and death and reconciling with us. Romans 5, Paul says, when we were without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. It's about reconciliation. And in 2 Corinthians, he talks about being ministers of reconciliation. Sam, you got something you want to comment on? Yeah.
Just a brief comment. You said we did it, and we like to think it would have to be who did it. And if we weren't at fault, we just inherited the consequences. So I want to get you off track.
I don't think we just inherited the consequences. I believe we have participated. We have participated in taking the fruit from the wrong tree. Instead of taking the fruit from the tree of life, we ourselves have taken the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil to decide for ourselves what is right and wrong, irrespective of what God says is good. Right? Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Sam. Okay. Stanley?
Those three words, in the beginning. What does in the beginning mean? And obviously, it means in the beginning of God. Because he's been around forever. So it's hard to fathom what that means. How long before you lived in heaven and earth, or what that specifically had to do with in the beginning was. Also good with that man who moved over woman.
Well, that's a consequence of sin, right? That's not the way it was intended to be.
I reminded her that I didn't think that, but that's how I see it.
Not the way God intended it to be, right?
That's right.
It's a consequence of the fall. All right. That's something God is actively working to reverse, right? Right, Arlinda? That's something God's actively working to reverse. It's not meant to be permanent. It's a consequence of what we've done. Okay, so the whole rest of the Bible is how the story unfolds about God's plan to reconcile with his creation so we can all be one together with him again, and how he's going to renew creation. Okay, that's the theme of the New Testament, is new creation. Okay, so this is not just history. It's God's story. And the significant thing is it's not a finished story. Like there's a Act 1, which is creation and fall, and then Act 2, which is God forming a covenant with Abraham's family, and then Act 3 is exile. We're all living in exile. Israel lived in exile, and you and I are living in exile. And Act 4 is the Messiah. It's Jesus and there's the climax. And then Act 5 is new creation. Well, we're kind of between Act 4 and Act 5 right now, right? So you got Act 4 in Jesus, Act 5, think about it like a play, and the new heavens and the new earth, and we're right in the middle of that, and we're making our way from one to the other, and we're having to live in accordance with the rest of the story. Okay, so imagine N.T. Wright puts it this way, who's a Bible scholar. He says it's like there's a Shakespeare classic that's just been discovered that nobody's ever seen or read before. They pulled it out of some ruins outside of Stratford-on-Avon or whatever, and there's a Shakespeare classic, and there's clearly defined 5 acts. But once you get to the 4th act, some of the paper's missing. And they want to perform this play, but in order to do it, you've got to, once you act out the first 4 acts, you've got to, at the end of the 4th act, you've got to supply some of your own material in order to get to the 5th act. So how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to sit down and you're going to look at how the first 4 acts went and everything that happened in those first 4 acts. What are the characters like? And what are the main events? What do they do? And then you see this dramatic ending over here, and okay, this is what we're going for. Well, how do we build the bridge from there to here? And that's what you and I are doing. Like, we're looking at Scripture and we're building the bridge from Jesus and the early church to new creation. And we've got to live responsibly given everything that we've read from then to try to get to there. Does that make sense? Okay, I thought that was a pretty neat way of telling that story. So the New Testament, the Bible and the New Testament, the Old Testament and the New Testament are all getting us to that point. This is not just history, it's God's story, and it's how we fit into it. Okay, so the Bible, in order to help tell that story, gives us a story of covenants. Okay, covenants are a major feature in the Bible. What is a covenant? Okay, contract.